Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm looking at some nice modern rolling stock by Accurascale. Over the past year or so, I've let rolling stock reviews take more of a back seat really, in favour of a few more locomotive reviews. I tend to find that more people are interested in locomotive reviews anyway. But recently I've started producing a few more rolling stock reviews and they've been really popular, much more so than I remember. So my question for you is, would you like to see more rolling stock reviews or do you prefer the loco reviews? Do comment down below and let me know. Maybe it is time that I covered a bit more rolling stock. I mean, after all, there is so much rolling stock being produced at the moment. Anyway, recently I picked up a wagon pack of 3 wagons from Accurascale and today I'm going to take a look at them. So we are looking at this. This is the Accurascale BR 21 ton MDO mineral wagon pack. And I say this is nice modern rolling stock. I'm obviously talking about the models themselves because the prototypes were introduced a very long time ago now, back in 1950. And of course that date makes these extremely versatile wagons because 1950 was still very much in the steam era, so you could use plenty of steam locos that were still around then to haul these wagons. So you've got your 8Fs, your Black 5s, and obviously all of the BR standard locos as well. You could hook a 9F up to these. Great stuff. Obviously though, 1950 is quite late on in the steam era. Not too long after that, the diesels came into play and these wagons were around for a long time after the introduction of the diesel, so they're perfect for your diesel fleet as well. They also built many of these wagons, over 10,000, I think 14,000, something like that were built. It's an absolutely enormous number. They were mainly used for transporting coal, but they're also used for transporting scrap metal and salt and that sort of thing, so incredibly versatile models. Now, I've been talking quite a lot recently about the price of new simple wagons and how I think creeping up to £30 now for a single wagon is getting a bit too expensive. And I think these are a good example of far more reasonably priced wagons. So the full price for these wagons is £74.94, which makes these about £25 each because there's 3. I think £25 is about the fair price for a simple open wagon, but I paid much less than that. Accurascale have a rake deal where if you buy multiple packs of wagons, they will give you a certain discount depending on how many you buy. Now, with my order, with these 21 tonners, I bought a different wagon pack and that discount still applied, which is not something I realised was the case. So bear that in mind, you don't just have to buy multiple of the same pack to qualify for the discount. You can buy totally different wagons at the same time, if this experience of mine is anything to go by anyway, and still get the discount. So in the end, I ended up paying £67.44 for this pack, which works out at £22.50 per wagon. Now, £2.50, you might think big deal. Well, sure, if you're just buying 3, that's not a whole lot. But if you're buying a rake of 10 or 30, that £2.50 per wagon really does add up. So good value actually by the sound of things. Not seen the model yet, but on the surface, it seems like very good value. And the question is obviously, how can Accurascale afford to do this? Well, obviously the answer is this is only through Accurascale's website that you get this deal. And the reason they're able to do this is that at £74.94, they've got a really good profit margin there. They've got their own profit plus the profit that a retailer would have made if these were sold at a retailer. So by eating into that little bit of extra profit, they can give us customers a really good deal. And I'm in two minds about this sort of thing because obviously the lower price is fantastic, but also obviously this encourages people away from the retailers where they're slightly more expensive and towards buying directly from Accurascale. And I've had a few comments about this. It's quite an interesting topic. Obviously a lot of people want to support the retailers. They recognise the value of the retailers, but also times are hard. This model railway hobby is very expensive, but it's also great for people's mental health. So as much as people say it's a luxury, it's also very important for a lot of people. People don't have unlimited resources. Saving a few pounds on a wagon can make a big difference. So yeah, it's hard. What do you think about this? Should we be supporting retailers, or should we be supporting ourselves and getting the best possible price? It's an interesting question. Anyway, I'm rambling now. Affiliate links if you'd like to pick one of these up, both from the retailers and from Accurascale, so you can make that choice. Let's see what these models are like. All right, my second Accurascale triple pack. Oh, there I am. Hi there, nice to see you. Anyway, this model has been so popular that Accurascale produced 2 batches of this. They made a second batch. And interestingly, the second batch of these 21 tonners had some modifications. The chassis was retooled apparently. I'm not entirely sure why. They say it was to make it easier to convert these to fine scale, but I feel like there's got to be other reasons than that, because a retooled chassis seems like a massive investment for a second batch. Improved couplings, improved fit of the lamp brackets, that kind of thing. Anyway, they invested in modifying this model, which is interesting. Anyway, let me show you the end of the box. So the version I've got here is the BR 21 ton MDO mineral wagon, pre-tops pack G, and it's ACC 1088, and we've got the 3 running numbers there, and they're in the BR grey, and this is Era 6. And I think that is all the box tells us. That's a fair bit of information anyway. But let's open this up and see what these wagons are like. And I also like the fact that you get this nice presentation box, which seems quite large, but then if you think about it, it's only about the size of 3 standard wagon boxes anyway, yet it's a bit more convenient because you can carry this in one go. You've not got to juggle multiple wagon boxes. You cut the number of boxes down by 2/3, which is great. Anyway, opening up, and look at this. When do you ever get this sort of thing with a single wagon? So we've got a lovely history of these wagons, which you can pause and read if you'd like to. Then on the back, oh, we've got an exploded diagram with a parts list. So again, this is above and beyond for a wagon. We can also see what's involved. So it's not the most complex wagon where the body's concerned. We've got a few little handrails pre-fitted. The rest of it seems to be just a moulded body. The chassis, though, is a bit more complex. You can see we've got a fair bit of underframe detail and what looks like a very nicely moulded chassis. Looking forward to seeing that up close. And then general information down here. If you want to pause and read that again, feel free to. And I've not looked at these yet. There are the wagons. Fantastic. Let's have a look and see what's in this accessories pack then. Oh, look at this. So we've got a whole collection here of Instanta couplings, which is very, very good to see. I mean, those more expensive wagons, at least the ones I've tried, didn't come with couplings like this. And yet here we have cheaper Accurascale wagons which do come with them. Very, very good to see. Right. The wagons themselves then, let's see if I can pull this tray out. I don't suppose there will be any other accessories. I suppose I'll check. Nope, that's all. So they're quite sizable wagons really, aren't they? They're not tiny little things or anything. So you do get quite a bit of train for your money here, especially for 60-something pounds. It's not bad at all. Right, I think that's off. And there we have it. Let's start unwrapping then. So let's go with this top one first. Lifting up. Ooh, there's a fair bit of weight to that. Not bad at all. So there you have it. And yeah, this looks fantastic. Brilliant finish on it. Very pristine, of course. I can see a lot of people maybe wanting to weather these. As we saw from the diagram, very nicely produced underframe detail. That looks great. And on first glance, the quality of the build here is fantastic. Everything straight, no visible glue marks, no hiccups in the decoration. Yeah, that looks really, really good. Right, put that one to one side then. Let's grab the next wagon, which is going to be the same thing, more or less, just with a different number. But again, that's useful. That means you can just pick up one of these packs simply and easily and know that you're going to get 3 different running numbers. And of course, there's lots of other packs besides this one. Or at least there was. Some of them may have sold out now. But yeah, Accurascale made plenty of these. Yep, lovely, lovely looking wagon. And then of course, there is just one more. There we go. There you have it. Number 3 again seems to be produced to the high standard, and of course the beauty of buying 3 at a time like this tells us whether or not Accurascale are consistent with this quality. You know, if you get 1 good wagon, that's great. If you get 3 good wagons, that shows that, yeah, these are quality models across the board. And I suppose vice versa, if you get 3 duds, you know there's a good chance more of them are going to be duds. But no, these seem fantastic. So let's take a much closer look at these models then. We'll check out their details and of course their features. So there you have it, a close look at Accurascale's MDO wagon, and these are great. There's a lot going for these wagons. As you can see, the level of detail and the way these have been put together is fantastic. They're also beautifully painted, which is very good as well. Plus, they are good and heavy, coming in at about 40 grams. Now that's interesting because the construction, at least outwardly, is mostly plastic. The body is obviously just moulded plastic, and so is the chassis. If we look underneath though, you can see we've got a cast metal bar which goes across the length of the wagon, and that's where most of the weight comes from. I have to say, I think you do get quite a lot for your money here. 40 grams, that's about the same as recent Bachmann and Rapido wagons that I've reviewed. All of those more expensive than this. Obviously the extra weight is probably by virtue of the size of these wagons, but again, they are cheaper than wagons from other manufacturers, which is great. Accurascale are also wiping the floor with those other manufacturers when it comes to features. Obviously, we've already seen we've got instanter couplings provided for these hooks, which is great. We've also got sprung buffers. That is crazy for wagons of this price. Now, obviously, I would have been quite happy to see these sprung buffers missed off in favour of a better price, but what about adding them on and still doing these wagons for a fantastic price? Very, very good indeed. We've also got excellent and kinematic couplings. Look at that, very, very smooth moving. That's great to see. So these should be perfect runners. At least, hopefully I'm not jinxing it, at least they should be due to these smooth kinematics. So that's great. We're going to take a look at the level of detail in just a moment, but yeah, as you can see, that's done very nicely as well. There are 1 or 2 things that let this down in terms of quality though. Now, as I've already said, the way these have been built is fantastic. No visible glue, no mess ups in the paint or anything, but there is a minor thing that lets this down, one very minor thing and one slightly more major thing. So first of all, I've noticed some of the parts do have some visible flashing on them where they haven't been tidied up properly. This is the minor thing. Not a massive deal, obviously, though it would have been nice to have seen some of these parts tidied up a little bit more. On some of the wagons, these parts don't have the flashing and they look a lot better. The other thing is these are not free rolling wagons. On all 3 of these wagons, I've got one axle which is nice and free and spins well, and the other axle is always kind of stiff. Now, these wagons do not have separate bearings as far as I can tell, which I think is fair enough. The more expensive Bachmann wagons don't tend to have that feature, although most of the Rapido ones do. So yeah, that's fair enough, but I don't think that's the reason why the axles are stiff. I think it's because of these brakes. Look how close the brakes are to these wheels. And I think I can kind of prove that it's the brakes as well, because if I tip the wagon this way, look at that, the wheel magically becomes freer, but then if I return it to level, where gravity isn't pulling the wheel away from the brakes, then it stiffens up again. So I think we've got a bit of this classic Accurascale form over function again, haven't we? It's great that the brakes are so close to the wheels, that looks nice and realistic, but it's no good if it's going to impact the functionality of the wagons. It's quite feasible that modelers will want to put very large rakes of these wagons together, and at 40 grams they're not particularly light, so free rolling is essential for wagons like this. Pity that that is not better than it is. Anyway, let's go over some of the details and features. So paintwork wise, we've got a lovely finish to these. They look very, very realistic, and the inside of the wagon has been painted in a separate colour as well. We've got the classic white stripe, which has been nicely applied. And then there's this little board here which has the running number printed onto it. There's also quite a bit of printed detail along the sole bar as well, as you can see, including this builder's plate, which isn't a separate part, I don't think, but it's been printed onto a section with a bit of relief so that it looks like it's almost a separate part. So yeah, it's not quite Ellis Clark levels where we did actually have separate parts, but I do think this looks just as good, and of course that makes assembly so much simpler as well. Here's a look at the axle boxes. I mean, the moulding, and we're going to see this across the whole model, is fantastic. Really crisp, really modern, looks fantastic. And so does the brake rigging. This is immaculately detailed brake rigging, and we've got some pretty tiny components on here as well. I've noticed that the brake handles are kind of movable. I don't think they're supposed to be, and you can't pose them. They don't stay where you put them. But yeah, it's a point of interest. I do think these brake handles, though, are just plastic, and they are quite fragile, so worth being careful of those when you handle the models. Here's a look at the underframe from the bottom. Yeah, it's not bad at all, is it actually? We've got the full underframe structure of the wagons. I think we've seen slightly better underframes on other models, but on the whole, there's definitely no cause for complaint here. And then here's a look at the side of the body. Again, fantastic quality moulding around these doors and everything. No separate parts here, except at the bottom, I believe. But yeah, it's been done really, really nicely. Here's the plain end of the model, which again just consists of moulded detail. And then here's the slightly more complex opening end, which again is mostly made up of moulded detail, but we do have these little wire handrails which are separately fitted. And all of the separately fitted parts have been perfectly applied. So there you have it, Accurascale's MDO. I think that's more or less all there is to talk about with these wagons. Very impressed on the whole. They've got all of the details you could ask for. They've got slightly more of the features, I think, that you could ask for, and a very reasonable price indeed. Provided you're buying at least 6 of these, you can get these for £22.50 per wagon. That is pretty good for this day and age, especially when many wagons cost £27 to £30. Very good. Obviously, the downside is that you've got to buy in bulk, but not many people would just be buying 1 or 2 of these anyway, so I think that's pretty good. Anyway, interested to see how these perform on the track. Like I say, in theory, I don't think these are going to be great rollers, but maybe when they're right side up on the track, that will change. So let's see, and let's couple them up to a loco. So here is today's test setup for testing the MDOs. As you can see, only a small train, so I've picked just a small locomotive, the 08 shunter, and just to be proper, I'll have put a brake van at the back. Otherwise, this train is mostly going to consist of these MDO wagons. Right, the dreaded free rolling test then. How did this go? About as well as expected. The first wagon I tried was a dead loss. Couldn't get that to sustain a roll at all because effectively the brakes are applied. Not very good. The second wagon I tested was the freest of the 3. Still though, not very good. I couldn't really get it to sustain a roll. It wouldn't go beyond the footbridge. Again, not impressive. The last one, once again, was a dead loss. We've got brakes touching the wheels, causing massive drag. And I hate to say this because these wagons are fantastic, but if they're not free rolling, that is a fundamental failure for a piece of rolling stock. And like I say, I've got 3 of these wagons. They're all the same to a more or lesser degree, so this is not a one-off issue. All of my wagons do it, but some axles are stiff, some aren't, so your mileage will vary on this. But I can say with certainty that there should have been more clearance between the brakes and the wheels, every single wagon affected. So they're not free rolling, but are the couplings at least effective? Let's see, I'll back up the 08 shunter. And we're going to test all of the couplings, all 6 of them. And we'll see how many succeed. Hopefully we'll get a 100% pass rate. We didn't. Okay, so this one at the back didn't do very well. Let's try again. See if I can see what's going on. Okay. So it looks as though there's a bit too much slop in the coupling hooks, which yes, I suppose there is because both of those missed. Let's try that again. One of them still missed. So yeah, couplings, bit too much slop. They should engage perfectly every time. Let's pull forwards, bring the brake van in. See if that one's going to miss as well. Yep, it did do. Although actually, the coupling on that pillbox brake van doesn't seem to be sitting perfectly straight, so let's turn it round and see if that improves. Don't want to be blaming the wagons if it's not their fault. And yeah, the Bachmann hook engaged there, but the Accurascale one didn't. So yeah, that's another issue, too much slop in the coupling hooks. But once coupled, that shouldn't be an issue. Well, we'll see. Hopefully the kinematics work fine. There we go. Yeah, that looks good. Right, let's back these over the points then and see how reliable they are there. Right, now obviously this Bachmann 08 is not a fast loco, so maybe I'm going a bit easy. Oh, All right. Now, not a great success. In fact, we're having a lot of performance issues with these, to say how simple they are. But I can't rule out that that wasn't the pillbox brake van to blame. So let me try and get these coupled back up, and we'll try the same test without the pillbox brake van. Obviously these points aren't great, they're laid onto carpet, they're not the newest points anymore, but I do have plenty of rolling stock, as we see in these reviews, that goes over them fine. So let me just make sure they're open correctly and that there's nothing out of the ordinary there. No. All right, let's try again without the pillbox. Aha. Good. So it was obviously something to do with the pillbox that was causing that problem, because now they seem fine. Let's try it again just to verify, perhaps a little bit faster. Something's just shot out of the 08 shunter, did you notice that? I'll go and find out what that was in a minute. Yeah, okay. So it's not the wagons to blame, it's something about that pillbox that they didn't like. Yeah, they're fine. Right. Let's see what shot off the train then. Hopefully it wasn't a part of the wagons. Let's see. It looked like it came from the loco. Okay, yeah, it's one of the loco's sandboxes. All right, well, it's nice and warm up here, so hopefully we shouldn't need the sand. Right, I'll put the pillbox back on and I'll send them off around the track. Right, nice and slowly. Although, of course, for an 08 shunter, this is probably quite fast. Very simple train, so not expecting to see any issues, but things haven't gone exactly swimmingly so far, so still keep those fingers crossed. That's the tricky point, the S-bend. The couplings seem to be faring very nicely. So at least once coupled to the train, provided you've got a loco sufficient enough to overcome all the drag and friction, they do seem to be okay, both on points and on normal pieces of track. So yeah, overall pretty good wagons, not quite as good as I was expecting. You know, we've got a few issues with these. Generally the way they look is absolutely fine and they've got great features, so that's good. Performance though could have been better. There's really no excuse for having brake shoes catching on the wheels like that, causing drag. Particularly on the second batch of a model, these issues should definitely have been picked up and sorted by now. So that's not ideal. Everything else though seems to work nicely. They do stay on the track. Great kinematics on these, which is obviously important because of how long the wheelbase is of these wagons. So yeah, a bit of a mixed bag, but of course the price is very reasonable. I think if I'd paid 30 quid each for these wagons, I'd be a lot more miffed by some of the issues. I think for £22.50, obviously that's not dirt cheap and we shouldn't be seeing any issues at all at any price, but it's a little bit more easy to forgive, I suppose. But yeah, enjoyed those. They look pretty darn good. Let's do some ratings then for Accurascale's MDO mineral wagons. So right off the bat, level of detail for me has to be 5-star. These are incredibly detailed models, to say how simple they could really be. So great moulding. The decoration is very, very good. The builder's plate in particular looks fantastic. We've got Instanta couplings provided for the coupling hooks. We've even got sprung buffers despite the low price of this model. Fantastic brake rigging as well. The axle boxes look great. 5-star, absolutely brilliant. The same can't be said for the performance though. Quite a few performance issues with these, not just one. So first of all, they're not free rolling at all really, thanks to the brake shoes catching on the wheels. Inexcusable really, and all three models are affected. Also, there's too much slop in the coupling hooks on the NEM tension locks, meaning that sometimes, on my admittedly small sample size, about half the time, the couplings don't actually engage correctly, so that's not great. So the two fundamental things that rolling stock has to do, roll freely and couple correctly, these models seem to struggle with, so for me, 2-star. The quality though is really good. They're decently heavy, no issues with the build in terms of visible glue or wonky broken parts. The paintwork is top notch, but some of the parts did have visible flashing on them, which does break the illusion very slightly. I've docked 1-star, not a massive issue, but worth mentioning. Value for money then, so the full price is £25 per wagon, and with the rake deal I paid £22.50. Now I've given this 4-star, but I have to say if the performance was perfect or closer to perfect, this would have been a 5-star bargain. I think even though the price is very reasonable for these models, in order for this to be considered a 5 on value, you would want perfect performance, which is why I've not given it that. Otherwise though, you do get a lot for your money. It's a good quality model, they look fantastic, pretty good value. Overall then, that is a good score of 8.30 out of 10, or a grade of B, and looking at that, thinking how dodgy the performance was, I do think that score is quite high. And looking into it, the performance category is not weighed very heavily in the final calculation for the score, which looking back seems a bit strange to me. I'm not sure I'd agree with that. I think the thinking behind it was there's not much that a rolling stock does in terms of performance. All they've got to do is sort of roll along and couple, like I say, so maybe that's why I didn't make the performance weigh very heavily. But now looking at this, I think, well, no, there's not much to performance, but if something is wrong with the couplings or the way they run, then that's a massive fundamental issue, so performance should weigh quite heavily. So I think for next year, I'm going to increase the weight of the performance score. But yeah, grade of B. Apart from the issues I've described, I can't fault these wagons. Very, very good. So into the logbook they go for 2025, and that's 4th place, just above Bachmann's ZDO and below the Rapido Caledonian 10-ton van. So there we have it, folks. I enjoyed looking at these, and it's very nice to have some slightly more modern open wagons to haul with my 1950s or beyond BR locomotives. I'd also like your feedback on how you've gotten on with these wagons, if you've owned any, because obviously according to my sample size, 100% of these models have free running issues, but I feel like that can't be representative of all of these models produced, because if they were all dodgy runners, then Accurascale would surely have noticed during the sampling stage and made changes. So if you've got some of these MDOs, how many of yours are free rolling? How many of yours have the issue where the brakes seem to be touching the wheels? Please do let me know. For now though, yeah, I hope you enjoyed that review, hope you found that useful. If you'd like to pick up any of these wagons while they're still available, I do have affiliate links down in the description. A lot of them have sold out, but there are still a few left, so if you haven't got any and you'd like to get some, now's probably a good time to act before they're gone. I don't know if there's going to be another batch. Anyway though, thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you again very, very soon for another review. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.